Good morning, and thank you for your kind introduction. First and foremost, I would like to thank His Highness, ruler of Sharjah, for inviting me and my family to visit Sharjah and attend this conference, the most important government communications event in the world. I also want to thank His Highness for his warm welcome today to make me feel comfortable and welcoming, and for our wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. I am here in this beautiful cultural center of Sharjah, 11,000 kilometers from my home, because of a message of compassion, mercy, and understanding, which occurred in a courtroom in Providence, Rhode Island, and has been communicated around the world through the power of social media. I learned that it is not only the message, but the ability to effectively communicate that message that is most important. When people come into my courtroom for traffic violations or minor criminal matters, I represent the full authority of the government. I have several choices. I can order their vehicles to be taken and confiscated. I can impose large fines, or even send them to jail. Well, I am mindful that what I do and how I do it may impact their opinion for the rest of their lives on how government treats its people. I also understand that many people before me were suffering much larger problems in their life than traffic violations in my court. I learned that a little compassion from government to help people solve their real-life challenges was a much more productive way to perform my duties as a judge. The question I am asked most frequently is, how did you get to be like that judge that we watch on social media? I am that judge. Actually, it happened so suddenly on my first day as a judge. My father was a very proud man, and when I became a judge, he came to watch me on my first day in court. Of course, he was excited, and I was nervous, and the family was excited. My dad was a humble man with great vision. He was actually an immigrant to the United States from Italy. On that day, a couple was in court, and they had simple parking violations, and they had fines. And in their presentation before the court, they were so belligerent and obstinate, and even though it was undeniable that their violations were deserved, they insisted that they would not pay a fine and that they shouldn't pay a fine. And they told me about the struggles they were having with their children, and they were aggressive in their presentation before the court. I really didn't like their attitude. This is my first day in court, and I represent the sovereign, and I decided I wasn't going to take that type of example in my court. And so, what did I do? I exercised the full authority of the court, and I fined them to the maximum. And in my mind, I said, boy, I really fixed them, and I set an example. After court was over, I retired to my chambers, and my dad came in to see me. And I was happy to see him, obviously delighted, and I was waiting for him telling me how great I did. And so I asked him, I said, Dad, how did I do? His reaction to that question 38 years ago changed the way I treated every person in my court for 38 years. He said to me, this is an immigrant watching his son's first day in court. He said, Frank, that couple, how could you make them pay the full fine? You should have helped them. Why didn't you understand their circumstances? And I'll repeat, circumstances. They were afraid. It wasn't because they were bad people. And he gave me a lecture on compassion and understanding and forgiveness, particularly based on the circumstances of each situation. Since then, I have always tried to place myself in the shoes of the people or person who was appearing before me and act with understanding, compassion, and respect. That simple lesson I learned from my father, combined with communicating it through social media, has resonated around the world. That very simple message. It should encourage us all that this message has been warmly received in every corner of the globe. In a world that seems to be driven by conflict and division, people are yearning for kindness. They find that in my courtroom, and they also find it here in Sharjah and in the UAE. I must tell you that the top city in the world that follows Court and Providence and my personal Facebook page is right here in the UAE. So, we have a lot in common. I have judged tens of thousands of cases, and there are a few that stand out, and I thought I'd share a few with you to give you an example of what I was confronted with. There was an elderly man that approached the microphone using a cane. He was frail, and he had to sit while addressing the court. His name was Victor Koella. He was 96 years old, and he was charged with speeding. He said to me that he only drives when he has to, and that he doesn't speed, and that he was taking his son for cancer treatments. And then he added that his son was 63 years old. And so I replied to him, these kids, never stop taking care of them. At any rate, I was saddened for this man. We had indisputable evidence that he was guilty. I knew it, he knew it, everybody in the courtroom knew it. So as my father taught me, I tried to place myself in Victor's shoes. The cold letter of the law would result in me imposing a fine on Victor. But would that accomplish justice? It was like my father was standing on my shoulder, whispering in my ear and saying to me, Frank, he's 96 years old. His son has cancer. You have to help him. I decided that this wonderful man was so dedicated to his family that there was no way he was going to pay a fine in my courtroom. So, not only did I dismiss the case, again, taking his circumstances into consideration, right? I congratulated him for being a great father, and I told him that we would pray for his son. Victor became a worldwide sensation, over 500 million people watching him, all from one small act of kindness and compassion. Well, that's not the end of the Victor and Frank Caprio situation. We became friends. Victor, 96 years old, invited me to his home and baked me an apple pie. And I was saying to myself, he's 96, I really have to eat this pie. It was delicious. So Victor and I became good friends. I invited him to my home for meals. And recently, I surprised him on his 100th birthday. And we had a great party, a surprise party, and Victor was so overwhelmed that he was crying. Additionally, I can tell you that his son is cancer-free and Victor is doing fine. And he asked me to report how this trip went when I get back. So I'll tell him that he was a big hit. Every day, people came to court and brought their young children with them. Now, I understand that a courtroom can be a very intimidating experience. You walk into a oak-paneled courtroom, the judge walks in, everybody has to stand up. There's a big desk above the people where the judge sits. There's a policeman with a gun. And in many cases, the child's parent is very nervous. One particular enjoyable part of being a judge is that you get to make the decisions. Right or wrong, your decision stands, which means if you want, not that you're supposed to, you can bend the rules a little bit. One way I would do this is when parents came in with their children, I would invite the children up on the bench to help me decide the cases and let them be the judge for their parents' violations. This gave the children an entirely different perspective. So rather than being frightened by something bad happening in court, they were now in charge. So imagine a 12-year-old son up there making a decision on his parents' violation. The common thread of the thousands of children that I asked to help me decide a case against their parents was that they all, without exception, were honest. So when their parents did something wrong, the children would make them pay. There was a parent that was charged, by way of example, with going through a red light, which was on video. So we had a video presentation of the parent going through the red light. So after we watched the video in court, I asked the child what I should do. Was he guilty? And the child said, "Oh yeah, Daddy does that all the time." There was another case where a parent was charged with speeding. So I asked the child if they think their father was speeding. And the child says, "Oh, he was speeding on the way to court this morning." Well, honestly, by dismissing the matter or by reducing the fine, the child returned to their parents with an entirely new respect for the institutions of government. It's a win, win, win. It's a win for the parents because they did not have to pay the fine, and their child is happy because they had fun in the courtroom. It's a win for the child because they have seen that government's role is to help people and not hurt people, which can impact the way they conduct their behavior for the rest of their lives. And it's a win for the city because justice was served by implementing a fair and compassionate proceeding. In my courtroom, so many things have happened. People have laughed, cried, proposed marriage, danced, and even named their children after me. Now, in order to diffuse the situation or make people feel comfortable, many times when it's obvious that a woman is pregnant, I would ask them whether they were having a boy or a girl. And if they said they were having a boy, I would tell them that the new rage in naming a child for a boy's name is Francesco. Now, very few of these people shared the ethnic background that I have, and they came from other countries, and they came from different nationalities, and I never really expected anyone to name their baby Francesco, because that's really my name. However, I might want you to know that there are young people in many foreign countries today who have a name, Francesco, because of me asking them to do that. Anyway, government's role is really to help people and not hurt people. It can impact the way they conduct their behavior for the rest of their lives. And treating people fairly is a win for the city and for the sovereign, because justice was served by implementing a fair and compassionate court proceeding. People from around the world have responded with my social media footprint having over 20 million followers and 6 billion views. It was all possible due to understanding the role of direct communication between the judge on behalf of the government and the people, and in a way that responds directly to their needs. If I had to summarize my approach to enacting justice, it would be this. I wore a robe before my judicial proceedings, and under my robe, I did not wear a badge. I had a heart. And that made all the difference. I also understand that someday we may all be judged. We are leaders in society, leaders of the world, and leaders of people. And what we do will profoundly affect their lives and the lives of their families. And so we make judgments every day for other people's lives. But we cannot forget that someday we will all be judged. And when we are judged, we will be judged by the hope that we inspire in the hopeless, and we will be judged by the difference that we make in the lives that we touch. Thank you again to His Highness, Ruler of Sharjah, to the Sharjah Government Media Bureau, and thank you for asking me to speak at this forum today. It is a singular pleasure for me to be here. I'm enjoying it immeasurably. The hospitality, the people in your area have just overwhelmed me. I feel so welcome. Again, I cannot thank His Highness enough for his receiving me this morning and making me feel comfortable, actually making me feel at home. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank all of you.